Yeah, I'm gonna jump to Admir. He had a sounds like a complicated question, so we'll give you the stage, Admir. What do you got going on?
Hey, I'm doing a trying to do a standpipe calc, but I'm stuck.
Okay. You got your drawing open?
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and share your
Um,
screen and take a look at what's going on.
okay. This is kind of so I just use that background as a base plan to
Sure.
route my stuff, so I'll just hide it for now.
Okay.
So I had to use a wormhole because the existing site is one level above, so we're dropping down.
Okay.
Put in my pump, put in my backflow, blah blah blah. Set it all with the water supply info that I have.
Okay.
And wormhole over here. So that's high pressure. And here's my standpipe riser. I got it to compute, like I set all my nodes as the way I want them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, is there any way to show the pressures for like the lower end of the standpipe? They're not showing up. Like I need to know. Actually, wait, that's a bigger question on its own. Let's just stick to high pressure for now. I have two pressure zones, right? This is my high pressure.
Sure. Understood. High zone, low zone. I got you.
Yeah. Like
Um.
not picking up this hose valve. Like if I go,
Right. So, unfortunately, the program, um, unless we've got water flowing past um, a hydraulic junction point or past a node, the program
mm,
is not going to populate any data at that location. So, what a lot of designers end up having to do um, for hose valves that are connected um, below the interconnection of the
yeah,
standpipe is they're forced to um, turn a hose valve on to a very very small water flow, to very very low fixed flow, to be able to generate pressure data at that location. Now it looks like you do have checkpoint gauges that are maybe hidden.
yeah,
Okay, so you've placed checkpoint gauges at all of the locations where you want to populate data,
yeah,
and you're getting data at all of these points except for the points that are below the interconnection point. Correct?
yeah,
Okay, so I think what you're going to end up having to do is turn that hose valve on and then change that flow to like zero point zero 0.01 GPM, and then change the minimum pressure to. You could probably leave the minimum pressure at zero. I don't think you even need to have a minimum pressure.
mm,
Zero K factor, you might need to, but let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and
yeah.
change the flow to zero point 0.1.
That was which one was that? Level 7 hose valve.
Yeah. Okay, so you're selecting the supply information, so it's going to show graph information here. Let's go down to the checkpoint gauge data below. So there we go. Level 7, each hose valve, we are getting zero point 0.1 GPM, 220 PSI.
Okay, that seems accurate.
Now, if you turn that off, so I'm just curious, if we turn that hose valve back off, that L7 HV is not going to populate anything. I want to double check this to make sure.
Didn't last time, I don't think. Let's see.
Yeah, okay, it is. It's all zeroed out. Yeah, so
Yeah,
unfortunately we have to place we have to tell the program to flow water there, even just a tiny amount of water,
yeah,
to be able to populate and generate pressure data at that location.
yeah. Well, that helps. Um,
But obviously, the drawback here is that instead of having that fixed flow of 500 GPM for this, two vertical riser standpipe system, now you're going to
mm,
have 500.1 or 500.2, So just be prepared that, having to take this approach, you might have a plan reviewer or somebody that says, hey, how come you're not at exactly 500 GPM? What's this extra little flow for?
Yeah.
And you might just need to explain, like, I had to flow a little bit extra to be able to populate, pressure data below the interconnection point of these standpipes.
And then this, so this, 1 second. This pump graph, what's this number here? 266.
So that's saying what your total demand, your total pressure, required pressure of the system is at 500.1 GPM.
1.
So what this is telling me is that at the pump, your pressure requirement is greater than your combined pump and city. So if you go back to the remote area data tab, I'm guessing that we've got a negative.
30.
Yeah, we've got a pressure overage of 34.5 psi.
33.909 at the roof. This is the roof hose valve, old mechanical highest hose valve I have. I have to design the pump a little bit bigger because the west tower is slightly taller.
Gotcha.
But so to do static, I guess I just gotta, instead of 500 at the top, I point 0.001 or something.
No. So the nice and that well that was the old way. But with checkpoint gauges, the checkpoint gauge report will populate static pressure values automatically for you.
Where?
So it's only in the report. So let's close out of.
I just had that open.
So let's select the checkpoint gauge data.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't have that open.
let's preview just that one. So let's turn the other ones off.
Yeah, I didn't. Some of them have a lot of pages.
And so this report has the inlet static pressure column, and so the program will automatically calculate the static pressure. Now you'll notice that at some of these the static pressure is less than the required pressure at flow, and that reflects the pressure overage that you have, the negative safety factor.
Yeah.
Because obviously, generally, your static pressure is going to be greater than your residual pressure, but in this scenario, because the way we're calculating this system, and we've got a negative pressure overage, or a negative safety factor, the demand pressure is greater than the static pressure.
Inlet static. And this is obviously pressure at flow, right?
Yes, that's what's required at flow. And again, that's what's required. So to satisfy the demand of the system, we need that much pressure. But obviously the program's saying at no flow, we've only got 197. And then at flow, what doesn't populate in this report, that again we're working with our development team to populate this data, is available pressure at flow. There is a way to calculate that, the checkpoint gauge, if you select it, but I believe it's a platinum only feature. The program, it already populates this data. It populates available pressure at these checkpoint gauges, but it doesn't report it anywhere, which it should. And it certainly has the capability to do that, and so we're working with our development team to incorporate that functionality. So what is available at level 10 hose valve when flowing 500 GPM, it's going to be, roughly that, whatever that 33.5 psi difference is. So 207.3 minus 33.5, that's what's available at 500 GPM.
Why doesn't it put that there? It's a little misleading.
Because it's populating what's required. The program is going to populate the pressure that is needed to satisfy the demand of the system. And then obviously, like I just did, you can quickly calculate what's available there by subtracting the negative safety factor from this required pressure value.
Is there any way to get rid of that? I guess I just gotta downsize my pump
Well, you're going to need to upsize your pump.
or upsize it.
Yeah.
Why though? I'm oversized already by 33 pounds.
No, you're undersized by 33 pounds.
Where'd you get that from if I'm under 33 at the roof?
You're over 33 at the roof. So you know what? Sorry, go back to the analysis really fast. I apologize. Maybe I'm confused here. Let me reanalyze what's going on with this.
I did hand math just to kind of guess my boost and everything with the city, just to get it started. Till I, obviously figure out what I actually need. But
Okay, so something else, just FYI, we are including an outside hose demand, and I don't know that that's necessarily appropriate for a standpipe calculation. So we might want to consider getting rid of that 250 outside hose, but the pressure underage, that's telling us that we have 34.5 psi less available than what we need. We need 34.5 more psi
to get to the roof,
to satisfy the demand of this system based on the minimum pressure and flow rates that we've established at the hose connections.
really?
So your roof hose valve, we've got 133 psi. Let's take a look at the valves on your roof.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just get rid of that stupid hose allowance.
Okay, 100 psi, 500 GPM. Yeah, why is it putting 133? Let's do this. Go to the hydraulic loss tab. Let's turn that off. Let's get rid of that equivalent length. Just change it to 0, or yeah, I think that might be screwing this up a little bit.
Yeah, I think
here.
there's a lot of friction loss or something like that. We usually don't include those in our calcs ever.
I never have.
Is there any way to not have the program do that automatically?
That made
Standpipe
it.
Wizard, I guess you can't.
Okay, so those two things made a huge difference. Now it's telling us that instead of 33.5 psi needed, now we're down to just under 9 psi, but we are still over the curve. Let's scroll down to in the checkpoint gauge data section. Okay, roof hose valve 109. Let's do this. Click on the node analysis tab. I want to see what's driving this system. And change the minimum floater display to 1. Let's increase that. Okay, so we only have the one hose valve. 500, 100 psi at 500. And then node 400.
What's this fitting? Look, it's minus 100.
So that's just that's the pressure, the minimum pressure that you set.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the program is starting it there. So it's starting at 100 psi, 500 GPM, and then calculating down through the standpipe. So what this tells me, 400, that's our supply. And we need 132 psi at the supply. Okay, so we only have the one flowing device. Let's click on the pipe analysis. Okay, so we've got a crazy high velocity. So we're flowing. So unfortunately, what's happening here? You've got the hose valve connected directly to a GOL, correct?
Oh, what?
A grooved outlet on the standpipe, a 2.5 inch grooved outlet.
Well, it's whatever the wizard gave me at the time.
So
Putting it together.
what I think we might need to do, Admir, is copy that hose valve and set each of the hose valves to 250. because what the program is doing, let's zoom in. Let's close out of this and zoom in on that roof hose valve. What the program is doing is it's trying to calculate a friction loss through that short little piece of pipe, 500 GPM through that piece of 2.5 inch. No, sorry, undo. Let's undo this. Yeah, let's go ahead and leave
Yeah.
that as is, but select that nipple and the valve, and let's copy it down a foot, comma, comma, -1.
Whoops. Alright.
Yeah, no worries. We copy back up. Perfect. And now let's run a cleanup intersection. All right, now let's select both of those hose valves and change their minimum flow to 250. Okay. Now let's run an analysis report. You're going to get another, the program's going to generate another node tag at that second hose valve.
Yeah.
But now we're no longer going to be, see,
Only one
we're
pound
super
over.
close, yeah. And the velocity is much better. Instead of trying to push 500 GPM through a 2.5 inch nipple, now we're down to 250 GPM through a 2.5 inch nipple.
Is there any way to get rid of that? Like just have it not calculate equivalent length?
You
Kind of
could
tough.
potentially zero the length, the hydraulic length of that, of those nipples out, but I don't know that that would produce an accurate calculation. Because, well, so let me ask you this: is the intent to connect the hose valve directly to a welded grooved outlet and not have a short nipple? Or are you going to have, I mean, traditionally, and I know that, manufacturers, they have grooved end hose valves. I've personally never used them. I've only ever used threaded. So I've
The
always
threaded
had
one?
2.5 inch threaded nipples connecting my hose valve to my standpipe.
Depends on the contractor.
Fair enough. And I know
Looks like
contractors that have used those grooved ones, and I've seen them. I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. I would love to be able to just slap this thing right onto a grooved outlet and not have to send my fitter a fancy expensive valve wrench to screw this hose valve on without damaging it.
yeah.
But unless that's the case, it wouldn't really be accurate to not include the friction loss through that 2.5 inch pipe nipple.
Looks like one contractor uses just a mech T.
Now, MEC-T, that's going to be an even greater hydraulic loss. You know, traditionally it's more turbulent than a welded outlet, and maybe even more restrictive too, depending on the size. I've you've got a gasket in there as well versus just an outlet welded to a hole on the pipe.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's up to you as as the design engineer to determine or decide what's appropriate. But you certainly can. I mean, the ability to kind of ignore the length of that connecting 2.5 inch pipe is an option. But obviously, like I said, it's up to you to determine whether it's appropriate to do that or not.
Yeah, in our old program, we never took into account that 2.5, and we've never had issues, on hundreds of jobs.
Fair enough. And,
Never
and fire
were
pumps,
underpressurized on the roof.
fire pumps, they always overperform. Now, you said this is an existing pump room or existing.
Yeah, first they built like a little two-story Safeway type building, a Sobeys, and
Okay.
now there's gonna be a tower on one side and a tower on the other side of the building, and our fire pump's gonna be in the central Sobeys, so I'll have to run from there to, each tower.
Okay. But the
Um,
pump is going to be new, so the existing building
New,
does not
yeah.
require a pump.
No, the existing building had no pump.
Understood. So again, you're utilizing a factory pump curve. Um, the pump manufacturer, they're going to certify whatever pump at the rating that is specified, but when it's installed, it's going to overperform. There's not a pump manufacturer that produces a pump that doesn't overperform. Um, so again, now what's appropriate to, from an engineering standpoint, that's, that's entirely, up to you to determine. But we certainly can do. I mean, the program has the ability to eliminate, certain pipe segments. You can zero out the hydraulic length of pipe segments. As far as the
Yeah.
equivalent fitting, so the program, that 12-foot equivalent fitting, that's the program accounting for the pipe outlet, the T, equivalent length value of a T on that standpipe.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll be able to eliminate that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty tricky. I don't think you can even select it.
Yeah, um, we might be able to. It might be an option. Um, so if you open the properties of these 2.5 inch pipe segments,
These ones?
yeah,
Select
and then go to the
it.
hydraulics
Those.
tab. If you click the override length, yep. So now the program looks at this and it says, "Oh, this is zero length," and it's not going to calculate any friction loss through that pipe.
And would it help on the calcs to set the nodes at the top and the second hose valve as opposed to having them both on the top?
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. In the program, it's going to generate a node tag whether it's displayed or not. But I agree with what Paul's saying. Admir, you might want to consider copying that checkpoint gauge to that the second hose valve that we copied. Now the equivalent
So,
length. Let's take a look at that. So you can see it's not calculating any length there, but it is still including the
the
T
12 feet,
loss.
that's what's killing us. Or
So
giving us that 1 pound, 2 pound loss.
right. So let's close out of this and then open the properties of the standpipe. And this is
So
gonna be
this?
yeah, this is gonna be really tricky because we have a ton of outlets on this. Oh no, we just have the two.
Oh no, it's segments. It's like,
Oh, beautiful, perfect.
nice, yeah.
I got nervous for there's gonna be like 30 or 40 of these things. Okay, so let's double click on one of those. Let's just do one at a time. Ah, dang it. Okay, so there's not. I was hoping there was going to be a hydraulic tab, but there's
Right.
not. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to ignore or override that equivalent length value without doing some really tricky stuff. I mean, there is a way, but it's potentially could be harmful down the road if you forget to adjust something back.
I know. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, fair
What was
enough.
Paul saying? Oh, wait, hold on. Let me see what node tag I generated. Did it even generate an extra one?
No, not automatically. So what you'll need to do is go up to your hydraulics menu
Yeah,
and
not
then,
page.
yeah, force a. There you go.
Oh, don't change all of them now. Yeah, I see what it did now. That's messy.
So I'm curious, did it change the numbers of all of the existing node tags?
No, I
Those are still the
cut
same?
those.
Okay, good.
I cut those and pasted them just so I don't lose them because I spent some time changing them all.
Perfect.
Oh, now I gotta change these though.
Understood.
Figure it out later. I'll figure it out later. What was I gonna say though? But now here's the tricky part of the question.
Okay.
I know we're kind of running out of time, but
Yeah, no worries.
what do I do about the low pressure side of things? Do I have to make a separate file? And I was kind of thinking like this is just a very basic setup, but like it's my dual PRV assembly.
So I'm just curious, I've seen other designers recently doing these um, dual PRVs in line like this. What's the purpose of that?
We need it for standpipe. If you're doing standpipe, if you're doing just like dry valves, like I did on the last job, then you only need one. But we need two.
And so I'm just curious how these function in line like this, and why.
Series. 1 second, let me pull out something.
I just personally have never. So I'm trying to learn something here. I've had to install redundant PRVs, but I had it in a bypass, arrangement. I didn't have them in line, and so I'm just curious. I've never seen this arrangement, and I'm just trying to learn something here.
Let's see. Yeah, so how did we typically design the low pressure side of systems? So what we use? You're saying you use them kind of like this, right? Or not really? That's two separate zones.
Yeah, that's two separate.
I forgot what it was. Oh, I forget now.
I feel like, in line like that, you're gonna have, one valve doing all the work. Like your upstream valve is gonna be throttling, and your downstream valve is just gonna be open all the time.
Yeah. Well, you just have a 10-pound differential. So you usually set the first one to go. On this job, it'll be the max I can set these at are 165. So I have to go like 165, 155, or 160, 150. Because I have 6 parquet levels, so I can't be overpressurized downstairs.
Gotcha.
But I'll look into that. I'll get you an answer. It might be a Canada thing.
Okay, no worries. Like I said, I'm curious. I've kind of been out of the design game for a little bit, and I've certainly want to learn and kind of stay in touch with design requirements and stuff. So just curious.
I remember I knew what it was, but now I forget. Pretty sure it's to do. It's a Canadian thing, but
Okay.
I'll get it for you.
Well, cool. I appreciate that. I mean, no worries. I don't want to take you away from your work responsibilities for my curiosity.
Yeah, I know I need to refresh too, clearly. What was I gonna say though?
Oh
I
yeah.
just want to throttle that basically to my final pressure setting, and I want to have a setting at that last PRV just to at 500 gallons to output 150 pounds. So I know last time you told me that you have to like set them at certain flows, but
Yeah.
now I don't really need a separate flow.
No. So the nice thing about a PRV like this for a standpipe system is that you know what your flow rate's going to be. It's going to be 500.
Yeah.
So you can establish your pressure loss through this device based on that flow rate and your available inlet pressure at that flow rate. So there are going to be a few steps you're going to need to follow here. You're going to need to run the calculation with zero pressure loss through these PRVs to determine your available inlet pressure. And so let me do this because we do have a video specifically.
Yeah, you sent that last time.
Okay, so you've got that
I was
information.
looking for it, but I couldn't find it. I was looking for it on the AutoSPRINK website.
Okay, let me do this. I'm gonna. Oh yeah, perfect. You're there. Okay, I can walk you through here. So we've got this in two locations. It's kind of one location we've got in our documentation, but it's literally a link to our webinar video. So if you go to the AutoSPRINK, expand the AutoSPRINK webinar videos just below you here, and then select the performing basic hydraulic calculations 2 of 2, and on the index at the very bottom at an hour 14, yes sir. So at this section, the instructor discusses how to basically how to calculate available inlet pressure for a PRV. And it's the easiest way to do this is you're going to need to add checkpoint gauges to be able to populate required pressure at that PRV inlet location, and then add any safety factor that you have to that required pressure to determine what your available pressure is. It's a little bit easier in Platinum because Platinum has the ability to populate available pressure when you select the checkpoint gauge, but without Platinum you're going to have to calculate the system, determine what the required pressure is at the inlet side of that PRV, and then add your safety factor pressure to that required pressure to come up with your available pressure. Once you have that available pressure, then you can compare that available inlet pressure based on the flow rate to a manufacturer. Now, assuming that the inlet pressure is greater than the valve setting, so let's say that your available pressure is 220 psi and the valve setting is 165, then the pressure loss through that PRV is just the difference between the valve setting and that available inlet pressure. Where it gets tricky, and I don't think you're going to run into this scenario necessarily for this, low pressure or low zone, is when the available inlet pressure is below the pressure setting of the valve.
Yeah.
That's
I remember we
when,
talked about
yeah, that's
last week.
when PRVs get really kind of tricky to calculate, and usually that's for large demand systems. You've got a really high flow rate where you're pushing a lot of water through the valve, and your residual pressure drops. There's still resistance through that valve that needs to be accounted for, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a little tricky. But again, if the inlet pressure is greater than the valve setting, then it's super easy. It's just the difference between the two.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like I can basically just, figure out what my pump outlet is, and then, you know, between the two PRVs, I just have to lose enough pressure to get down to 150.
Yeah, but it's a little tricky because you're running a demand calc, and PRVs function with consideration of acting pressure, not what's minimally required, but what's actually you know acting upon the valve and acting upon the system. So
Is
that's
that how the valve actually acts in AutoSPRINK, or is that
no, and that's where it gets tricky, um, because in AutoSprink we're simply accounting for frictional resistance through devices
through the device? Yeah.
to calculate what is the minimum required pressure and flow to satisfy that system flow demand. But in reality, that valve is going to have much more pressure acting upon it than what's required. So we have to
Yeah.
account for the pressure loss through that valve based upon pressure
The actual
acting upon
flow,
it.
but
Right. Not
but
what's
I
simply required.
yeah, but like in this case I only have 500. Never say never, but unless my dry valves, are, using up a lot of water, which they won't be,
Yeah, I mean,
you
it kind
know.
of depends. So
I
these are
basically
garage.
I just want to simplify it as much as possible, and I just want to,
Understood.
like in our old program, we would just run the calc and design it to, 150 psi max. Well, we
Sure.
wouldn't get close to it, but
Right.
we wouldn't go through, all this extra work just to
Yeah, and I've done
come to the
that.
same answer, right?
Right, I've done that in the past where I didn't want to bother trying to calculate the PRV, so I just made sure that my system demand, for whatever system it was, never exceeded the valve the pressure rating on the PRV. So I just made sure
Yeah,
that I never
exactly.
had a pressure demand anywhere downstream of my PRV that exceeded that valve setting.
Yeah, 150 or
Exactly.
65 or whatever.
Yes, sir.
That's basically what I want to do. Like I'm not getting, overcomplicated.
Understood.
I just want to get the standpipe calc done, because
I
now I
got you.
feel like I'm in a maze and I'm never gonna come out. But
Yeah,
I
I,
just have to
and
go
I mean,
somehow.
generally, that type of approach, you're going to have a huge safety factor. Um,
Yeah, which
because
is what I always have. We have,
yeah,
70 plus pound safety factor.
right,
You know, could you squeeze the pipe down? Yeah, sure you could, but then you gotta tell the fitters to be careful on
right,
every, extra elbow they add and whatnot. So,
exactly.
okay, so I can. So for the purposes for me, I just want the calcs to show what I want them to show, which is, the pressures at each hose valve
Hmm.
relative to 150 psi outlet pressure in my PRV. So can I just arrange my PRVs to have an outlet pressure of 150 and call it a day?
No, unfortunately, that the PRV is a PRV element in AutoSPRINK doesn't function that way. It functions like any other valve, where we basically specify, a pressure loss or resistance through the device, but we can't.
Yeah. So can I set the pressure losses, like do the math in my head to figure out, from the pump outlet, you put the loss, set the losses, 10 psi, 10 psi or whatever to get down to under 50.
Yeah, absolutely. So if
Okay.
if you've got 200 psi output on your pump at 500
Yeah.
GPM, then you could do 25 and 25 to not, to account for a 50 psi loss, so that, downstream of those PRVs, you've only got 150.
And then my low pressure zone will reflect that, obviously. And those
Yeah, but
pressures will be.
again, it's a little bit different because we're doing a demand calc. We're working from the hose, from the
The whole,
remote
yeah.
back through. We're not necessarily doing a supply calc and working, from the supply and pump
Upstream, yeah.
through. Exactly. Yes, sir.
Do I need to create a new file then if I want to run a low pressure calc?
No, not necessarily. And the program
Or
does
I have
have
to
the
close
ability.
the high pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you
I
would
have
just
to
close
isolate
those.
them.
Yes, sir. You just close those valves, or even, it would probably be best to close the hose valves. You potentially could close an isolation valve to that high, your high zone, standpipe system,
Yeah, I might just do that.
and just throttle. So then you can just, open and close isolation valves for high zone, low zone, depending
Helps,
on which one you want to calc. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't like having too many files.
I agree, 100%. I agree. And the program does have the ability to change the calculation method from demand to supply. So you do have the ability to run a supply calc to verify that, okay, downstream of this PRV, I'm only getting 150. The resistance that I've included, is limiting downstream pressure to 150. And then the program will balance discharge and pressures, based on what's available. So there is that option, but I don't know if you necessarily want to go to that extent. I don't know if you necessarily need to go to that detail or not. But
Yeah.
the option is there.
What was Paul saying about my hose valve at the top? He was saying something.
Oh, he was just saying,
Not important.
not really. He had noticed that we hadn't updated node tags and we weren't getting a node tag at that, the hose valve that we had
Okay,
copied. But we are now, and so you only have, the one checkpoint gauge at the top valve, so you might
Yeah.
want to consider copying that checkpoint gauge and having one at each of those discharging hose valves.
Yeah.
So you might say, top roof, top roof hose valve, or mech roof hose valve 1, mech roof hose valve 2, or something like that.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Yep.
With the lower one. Yeah.
Sweet.
Okay, I'll be on at 12 or 11, whichever time
Okay.
next session is.
Perfect. Sounds good.
See if I can run into any other issues.
Well, I hope not. But if you do, we'll work through it, man. We'll do our best to get it figured out and keep you moving forward.
Yeah, this is a huge learning curve. I'm getting stressed out just thinking about how I'm gonna get this to work properly.
Well, I certainly don't want you getting stressed out, man. And I understand. I've been there, and I've felt the stress myself. So that's certainly not what, I don't want you to feel that way. And if there's anything I can do to help you feel better, I'll do it. But yeah, just see what you can do between now and the next meeting, and if you run into anything, we'll get it figured out.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome, man.
Have a good lunch. I'll
You
talk
too.
to you later.
All right, bye.